Welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. I'm Tony Haggerty, or A Haggerty 10 as the Twitter handle says there, and I'm joined again by Alison McConnell for the last bulletin of this week. Alison, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Tony.
Nice one. Now, we'll see if Alison's Wi-Fi holds up. For those of a certain vintage, we got a bit of Norman Colley as yesterday, which gave us a laugh and a joke now and again. Now, Alison, straight into it. John Hartson, former Celtic striker and commentator and analyst and expert, he's urging Celtic to sign Jota right now. Nothing like scaremongering, no. He's saying if they don't sign him, he could be a target for the likes of PSG and Bayern Munich. What do you make of that? I mean, there is an option to buy for $6.5 million. That's supposedly the figure, but should Celtic do it right now, or do you think they'll hold off and wait, or do you think the player maybe wants to hold off and wait?
I think both parties might want to hold off and wait. I see his point. I'm not sure about PSG and Bayern Munich, I'd have to say. I appreciate his point that if he continues to play well, he attracts attention from elsewhere, and there's maybe a possibility that you don't get him. So I can appreciate where he's coming from in that respect. I think the player himself, who had a very unsettled time last season when he went out on loan, I think he might want to hedge his bets a bit. Certainly it looks as though he's enjoying his football just now. He's striking up a very good partnership with Kyogo. He seems fairly settled. It may be that he wishes to get to the end of the season and just assess his options. I think Celtic have been here many times before. I think if you think of the likes of Patrick Roberts and maybe even Odsonne Edouard in that first season when he came in on loan, I think people may just want to look at where they're going and whether or not they want to commit long term to the club. I think the fact that the fee is agreed works in Celtic's favour. It's not going to fluctuate. It's not going to go up. Even if there is other interest, and if the boy is settled, he may fancy that there's a year or two in Glasgow to then further his career in the long term. And of course, what you can't rule out this season is a big carrot that may come in the form of Champions League football. Yeah. Whoever goes on to win the league this season, barring really odd circumstances elsewhere, should have access into the group stages of the Champions League, and this will be a bit of an aberration. It won't be sustained, so I think it's one to be enjoyed if you can go and do it to take away the fraughtness of the summer qualification campaign. And I think it does attract players. I think there's no doubt about it. I think it's a huge selling point for any club to have.
Now, Jota has been consistent since he came in. Alison, stats: 6 goals, 6 assists, 14 appearances. Can't argue with that, really, can you?
No, it's been excellent. I think it's been a very seamless addition. I think there's a number of players actually that came into Celtic and started well in that respect. I think Kyogo would obviously be one. Jota, I thought Abada started very well. I know he's dipped, but I thought his impact immediately was impressive. I think it helps when you come in and there's an immediate contribution. You're bringing in players who are first team ready. They come in and they have something to offer immediately. I think Sean spoke about it, I think, on Wednesday, about the fact he was only barely in the team for that Dundee United game, a very frustrating game for Celtic, and people were looking to him already to make things happen. I think you can see he's a creative player. And I think you've mentioned his goals there, but some of those goals have been very important. I think if you think of the late goal against Aberdeen up at Audrey to give Celtic a winner, really important goals at important times to give Celtic big points where had they stumbled it would have been pretty significant. So I think you can only applaud what he's offered so far. I can see exactly why people would be say let's do this now. I think it will be the end of the season before it's done.
Simon Thomas comes in here and says, although Jota is good enough, surely Jota would want consistency in playing time. Yep. And Sean Curran comes in and says, there's no rush at the moment, plenty of time to review options on Jota in the new year. Brad McEwen just comes in, Ange rocks. It's one of those kind of days, isn't it? Friday, Ange rocks indeed. Now, I tend to agree with you, Alison. I think Celtic will weigh up their options, but I think a happy player is a big thing for any club. And as you say, if Celtic can win the title, that'll make them happier, and then they'll know there's automatic access into the group stages. That's a huge carrot for any player to put themselves in that shop window and play against European football's elite. So he might be waiting himself to see how Celtic fare this season in the title race.
Yeah, and I think he's at an age, I think he's 22.
22 years.
Where it's really important now to find some consistency. He's not had it so far in his career. I think it's very important that he plays. I would suspect his own ambitions would align with Celtic's business plan, the model that has been there for the last 10 or 15 years of having a couple of seasons here and opening the door to a bigger league. I think we all know about bigger clubs, but open the door to a bigger league. And I think European football is a huge part of that. I think, as you say, I think if you can showcase what you have against the very best in Europe, against premium teams, I think the atmosphere and everything that goes with Champions League football, any player would relish the opportunity to participate in it, and that there are so few clubs that can really offer that gateway. It's a massive carrot. There's no doubt about it. I think it's hugely significant in terms of selling the club. And I think you're right. I think if the player himself is happy in the city, if he's happy with his football, he's settled into a club. It's been fairly nomadic for him over the last 18 months or so. He may just feel that there's a season or two in Glasgow and then he takes the next step on his career.
Lots of comments coming in, Alison. Jota looks happy playing at Celtic. Simon Thomas expects him to stay for a couple. I expect him to stay for a couple of years before moving on. That's aligning what you were saying there, Alison, possibly. Frank Brennan, if the contract between Benfica and Celtic states he can be bought for a definite $6.5 million at the end of his loan period, and it's only us who have the first option, then buy at the end of the season. Brad McCune comes in and says we can't afford to pay out for Jota in January if we want to buy 3 or 4 players in that window. That remains to be seen, Rab. Will McMillan, Ange getting more out of Jota than I ever expected. And Les comes in. If Celtic are first option to buy, sure, the decision lies with Jota. Let's hope he is now a boy through and through. Well, I think he's getting bitten by the boy bug there, Les, as games go by and his time go by, and he certainly looks happy. As Alison said, some vital contributions so far, thinking of the goal at Pittodrie and also the goal that regained the lead in Hungary in Budapest against Ferencváros, and that came at a crucial time as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's all positive in terms of Jota at the moment, isn't it?
It's incredibly positive. He's one of a number of players, I think, who have come in and offered an immediate contribution. I think if you're looking to identify players in January, as someone just mentioned there, I think that's a calibre of player that you want to be going for. Someone that it's always a gamble, whoever you sign, but I think you want to be looking to players that can come in and contribute in a first team sense immediately. And I think the age group there just ticks so many boxes for Celtic in terms of young, hungry players, desperate to find a foothold into their senior career, their professional career, and kick on. And Celtic can give them that platform to do so. And we spoke about it often, but I think identifying players of that ilk is incredibly important. I think it goes back to your scouting network and opening the door. And Celtic did it with some success, basically from.
It was all going swimmingly well there, guys, for 10 minutes. I'll just read some more comments. Sean Kern comes in. Ange's creating an environment that makes it attractive to stay at Celtic. And you're back in the room, Alison. Nice one. Yeah, and Frank Brennan said, as I said before, the January transfer window has only been near disaster for Celtic in the past. And thankfully, I do believe Ange is going to do far better than we've ever done in recent times. So that's the next topic I wanted to discuss with you, Alison. Ange has reiterated the fact that he wants Celtic to do business early in January. So possibly, if that means maybe getting Jota done in January, there's also been links with Rio Hatate and Daisen Maeda. Do you expect Celtic to, as soon as the January transfer window opens, to maybe do a couple of bits of business in the first couple of weeks of January, rather than wait till the end?
I think it's very dependent on the identification of who you want to bring in. It's a two-way street. It's not always just as simple as going out to get who you want to bring in. It's about availability and making sure that there are discussions and that players are open to coming into the club. I think if players are already receptive, if they're out of, you're referencing players who are playing over in Japan, if their seasons come to an end, if there's an opportunity then to facilitate a move, then it makes life a bit easier. And I think the January window is notoriously difficult to get players in that you want, players in that can come in and make a difference. It's a it's a tough window, I think, but I think it can be so important. I think if Celtic come out of it having strengthened their hand, then it really just accelerates their charge if they want to go on and make a drive towards the title. But I do think it's important that you're bringing players in who are first team ready.
Yeah, and Ange just said that there's kind of far down the line with certain things bubbling away. So I think there will be an element of better organisation with Celtic and, a different approach to this January transfer window. And Sundar Scotland comes in 67 and says, I really hope the board don't fall asleep with Jota in the January window. It'd be nothing short of criminal. And KJM comes in and says, hope we get Maeda. He's an absolute weapon. And Rab McCune comes in. Here's one. We need a backup keeper badly. We spoke about that yesterday, didn't we, Alison? About
if Barkas goes out.
If Barkas goes out, that's something that Celtic might be looking to do as well. But Ange seems to be fairly on the ball, and what he's saying in his comments to the media is that he's got targets, and Celtic are actively aware of his targets. And I expect certainly Celtic, once the transfer window opens, that Celtic will do some business very early on rather than wait till the end.
Yeah, it remains to be seen. It also raises questions of just what's going on behind the scenes. I think we've spoken about this often, about the infrastructure around the club and about the identification of players and the scouting network and just who's responsible for sourcing players and then entering into negotiations to get deals done. I think there's still a few question marks about that. I think what the hints appear to be at the minute, what the suggestion appears to be just now from Ange Postecoglou is that he's heavily involved in that certainly he has certain players that he's made clear that he would maybe like to add them. I don't know if that comes down to the identification of positions that he would like to strengthen, or whether or not he has gone so far as to identify personnel that he believes come and fit into his system. But certainly the impression that you have to glean from those conversations is that he has a significant say in what's going on there.
Yeah. Frank Brennan comes in again and says Ange will be also looking hopefully to offload one or two and get them off of payroll. And if he wants to do business early in January, he might just know exactly who he wants. I think he does. And then he also comes back in and says Xander Clark. We mentioned him yesterday, didn't we, Alison? We spoke about him, saying that he's been interested in the other side of the city. Remains to be seen what happens with that one. David Bradley comes in. Hope we made it clear we want Jota. I'm sure they have. And Will McMillan says Ange sounds pretty positive with the comments about bringing players in, so maybe there is already movement. I think that's most certainly the case. Well, Sean, if we bring Maeda from the Japanese league, we're putting ourselves at risk for internationals and injuries. That's also a very good consideration, Sean. Yep, very much so. Now, Alison, another topic I wanted to discuss was we knew the debacle of the Dubai winter training camp last year. Everybody had their say in that. We'll not really talk about that. But Ange has described the chance to get away in a winter training camp this year as gold for his squad and his players and himself. He's also, I think he's targeting Portugal as a destination. Winter training camps can really have a galvanising effect, can't it? And if they go in there in January and they bring in a couple of players and integrate them in, it can all augur well moving forward. Celtic have previously in the past did well having gone on training camps to the likes of Dubai. Didn't work out last year. We'll gloss over that one. But I mean, it has served them well in the past going away, hasn't it? These winter training camps, sunnier climes.
Yeah, historically it has. I think over previous seasons, you just see what it's done. It's offered a recharge, a chance to train in a bit of warm weather, get away from the greyness of Glasgow in January in these months. Make sure you're getting some vitamin D in through the sunlight. I'm not sure how warm Portugal will be in January, to be honest, but I think I can see the thinking behind it. I can understand why, even just in terms of being able to actually work on specific things in a training sense. I think so often the opening months of the season can be fairly busy in terms of 3 games in a week, and then you have quite a few internationals. I'm not sure how much scope there is to actually work on things like shape and tactics and intuition with players. I think maybe getting away for a week or 10 days or whatever it is gives you scope to do more work, to do deeper work in that sense. I think you can see his philosophy taking root already. You can see what he wants to do. You can see players buying into it. I think he's been fairly clear about the fact he still thinks there's a lot of work to be done. And I think something like going away offers you an opportunity to go and develop those ideas a bit.
Now, Dermot 40 comes in with an offer. Ange and Celtic won't be able to understand, never mind refuse. Come to sunny Girvan for a training camp, he says. There you go, eh? Sunny Girvan. I've been there myself. It was sunny, to be fair. I'll back you up on that, Dermot. Yeah, and Frank Brennan comes back in, Alison, agreeing with you that totally agrees with Alison that all of the signings in January must be first team ready. We've spoken about that at length, haven't we? And I think there'll be a view for them to be bedded in for a few months with the Champions League in mind. You've also mentioned that it's methodical. He said that the other day. There was methods into what he was doing, and he works methodically, and that's what he does. So he will be projecting and thinking ahead about getting guys in and the chance that they qualify for the Champions League. I totally get that. Now, my last topic, Alison, a wee nostalgic one, memory lane. I went to Celtic Park last night to the Kerrydale Suite, and I watched the Tommy Burns story, Family, Faith and Football. And if you've been and you've watched it, it's absolutely terrific. But oh my goodness, it gets you right there in the swinging brick. The second half especially. Tommy Burns, the player who himself said he got lucky, a supporter who got lucky, managed the club, played for the club, and sadly passed away at 51 from melanoma. Do you have any memories of Tommy Burns, Alison? Did you ever have any direct dealings with him? And if so, would you wish to share them?
My memory of Tommy is that he was always late. I think I've lost count of the times I waited on Tommy, but he was great actually. Fantastic to deal with. I worked at Celtic in the early stages of my career. I worked in at the Celtic View just at the turn of the millennium when Martin O'Neill had just gone in, and Tommy was really in charge of the head of youth development. He was overseeing basically from under 21s down, and so we would deal with him often in terms of just going and speaking to him for bits and pieces. And we were away at a few tournaments actually. Went over to Jersey and a couple other places with him, and got to witness his party piece a few times as he got up and gave us a song. But I found Tommy Burns as the same in person as he came across in the media. I found him. He was a big Celtic fan. I think his faith was incredibly important to him. I don't think he ever, he was fairly open about that, and his family too. And certainly, I would never say I knew him on a personal basis. It was largely a professional context, and he was a joy to deal with.
I won a memory of Tommy Burns, and like you, I did some work experience at the Celtic View, be about 95, and he took me into his room because I was working beside Andrew Smith, who was the editor, and he's now
great friend.
Yeah, great friend of yours. And he took me into a room and he sat me down, and I was like, I was a Celtic manager, and I would be 23, and he was speaking to me, and he just had this way of putting you at ease and just making you feel like the most important person in the world. And he would say things like, I can see you're a Celtic fan, Tony. I can see it in your eyes. You're a Celtic man. And he asked me about my family, and was family important to me? And I would say, yeah. And he's like, that's good. But he would always come back to that and say, yeah, he can tell you're a Celtic supporter. It's written all over you. It's in your heart and your soul. And I was just like, oh, wow. And he was just, as I say, it was like for about 20 minutes. And for someone who was trying to make their way in the business to sit there with a Celtic manager, you think, what an experience. And he was a fantastic person. Like you, that was the only experience I ever had of him. And I think, like many people who were touched by Tommy Burns, it was quite an emotional experience for them, and they had various things last night about things that he did. And one of the bits in the play was just a random letter written by a lady to Rosemary, and she said she was standing in the rain at a bus stop, and Tommy Burns drove past and asked where she was going, and she was going nowhere near where Tommy was going, but he still took her home because he said that could have been his mother in the rain. He didn't want to see her standing in the cold. And she said, oh, and by the way, P.S., she says, my husband and my sons are all Rangers fans. So it's like, that's the kind of guy he was, and 51, no age at all, Alison, so sadly taken away. But I urge every Celtic supporter, if they get a chance to see the play, Family, Faith and Football, the Tommy Burns story, it's absolutely tremendous.
On that note.
And on that, I was just going to read some Tommy Burns sat beside me in Chapel and Girvan when he was in Scotland team training at Turnberry. But SSB enjoyed running him to Chapel in the big limo. Sean comes fortunate enough to meet Tommy. You're an absolute gentleman. Don't have to. You cry your eyes out, Tony, if you want to, and I'm a blubberer too. And we greet because we're Celtics. It's in our beer and our heritage that we cry. Yeah, I suppose so. He was a wonderful man, and those who met him will vouch for that. There is a true saying that people don't have a bad word to say about people when they pass on, but Tommy Burns is genuinely one of those people, Alison, that I don't think anybody has a bad word to say about the man.
I think for me it's his humour that stood out. I just always remember he did a nice way with all the younger players he worked with. He was funny. He was always ribbing them. He was always taking the mickey out of them and stuff. And he was kind of gregarious. He had a real enthusiasm. I was lucky enough to have a professional relationship with him, and I think the older you get, I think the more you appreciate just how young 51 is.
Yeah,
I think it's no age at all. It's 51. It's staggeringly young.
The irony is that the humour comes across in the play. It's very much documented that he was a great sense of fun. So it'll get you. It'll get you there. And I would urge everybody to go and see it. And I think we'll end with this one. Andrew Patrick Allen, Tommy Twist, Tommy Turns, Tommy Burns. Says it all. All righty. So thanks for that, and thanks for your contributions, guys. Appreciate that, and appreciate your memories of Tommy. And thank you, Alison, for your contribution. Always appreciate it too. Cheers for watching. And if you're watching on YouTube, remember and hit the subscribe button. You can see the strap line going across. Subscribe to the Celtic Way, and you'll get access to top quality sports journalism covering the club you love. All the best. Take care, guys.